City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded March 9, 2020.
Thank you, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Finance Committee on Monday, March 9th, 2020 to order. It is 8:02, even though it was estimated this would be at 6:55. That is not the case. So thank you and welcome everyone who, all those who stayed and all those who came for this meeting. Our first item on our agenda is the selection of a vice chair, something that we've kind of forgotten to do, and I'm hoping we can do that. And I would entertain nominations for said vice chair.
I would nominate Jeremy.
Okay, we have a nomination for Alder Slawinski. Is there another nomination? Is there another nomination? One can self-nominate as well, so just in case, I'm throwing it out there. Not that I don't think you can do, I'm just being fair.
Next one.
All right, I guess I would entertain, you don't have to vote or close the ballot. Something, yeah.
There's only one person.
Yeah.
Isn't there some motion
So
about casting unanimous
casting
ballot?
unanimous consent, yeah, I guess I would entertain a motion to cast a unanimous ballot.
So moved.
Okay, well, don't fight over it.
Acclamation.
Okay, by acclamation, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. All right, the third item on our agenda is the capital reallocation for the Parks Department. Since I don't see Director Kramer, I'm assuming,
Yeah, so a memo was included in your packet from the Parks Department, and then Director Kramer isn't able to join us tonight, but he did send Kate in his place, and Scott Halverson.
Oh,
So
there, yep.
two of the supervisors in the Parks Department to speak on this or answer any questions, provide any information. I don't know if either of you wanted to add anything. I know that, I thought the memo that was provided was pretty clear, but
yeah. I guess we'd start with the committee. Do you have any questions? Would you like staff to come up to the podium? Yes, Alder Shore.
Thank you, Chair. It is customary, and I'll do it here, to always be grateful to staff at the work that they put into squeezing the taxpayer dollar and figuring out solutions to unforeseen circumstances like this. So I just wanted to kind of say that for the record.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments, anything for staff? Yeah, Alder Slawinski. Oh, go ahead.
I'll move to approve the reallocation of funds for the Parks Department as in the stated memo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does staff have anything else to say? No, you just go and I'm here for.
Everything was outlined in the memo.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other discussion by the committee? Anyone from the audience? Yeah.
I guess I just have one thing.
Sure.
You know, in the last few months, there's been some votes that have come up regarding additions to the parks, and this, I guess, is, a good example on, you know, we have an obligation now. I mean, obviously, the swimming pool, I mean, we pretty much have no choice but to pay it because it's, you know, it's an asset that we have within our city, and you know, we have to pay it, and I guess that my point was when a few months ago when we were talking about adding additional land to our park system, that, you know, this was one of the reasons why I was against it, is because it's just, you know, once we create it, you know, we're obligated to maintain it and take care of it and invest in it. So again, this is kind of an example that, you know, once we establish them, they're there to take care of. So
Just like kids.
exactly.
Yep. Yes. All right, good points, though, yes.
I'm just happy that the pool's getting fixed. I know for years they've got, you kept putting it off, and then finally can't put it off. anymore. And I know I've enjoyed it, and a lot of my friends do too, so
Yep.
I'm just happy the pool's getting fixed too.
Yep, it's the one thing I hear from my constituents. We want this pool to open earlier, we want the pool to be open longer, and longer hours, because we have a lot of young families in my area.
My constituent in my house regularly.
Wants it as well, okay. Yes. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor, good discussion. I would call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Anyone wishing to abstain, motion carries. Thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is, come on, and naturally my
Airport.
technology is not working. It looks like the airport reallocation request. All right, what's up?
Yep, so the memo's in your packet, and then Director Lemke is here as well to provide any background information on it, if there are any questions, or if you wanted to give an overview. Okay. Are there questions from the committee?
From the audience? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion on the reallocation request from the airport.
I have one,
Oh,
sorry, I have one question. With
Certainly.
Spirit not being there now,
I'm sorry?
with Spirit not being there, does the airport need all these other upgrades and so on since Spirit is not there?
Yeah, the portion of the previous reallocation, we're kind of tumbling dollars around here from that initial request. That portion of it is about 81,600, and that was going to basically kind of jumpstart the paving and utilities that would kind of head toward where the Spirit hangar site was going to be. We're still going through that paving project this year, getting ready to basically accommodate future development out there. But now that we don't have somebody basically poised to build there, some of the stuff we were going to do is no longer necessary. The other stuff I mentioned in the reallocation that I'm requesting now are things that are very much necessary. It's just when do you work them in? How do you get them into capital? And since we have some dollars to move around, we can take care of those things and alleviate some near future requests, I'd say.
Okay, does anybody else had questions? No?
You could do your motion now if you want.
I second it. I thought someone.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Oh, I'll make the motion.
Oh, okay, thank you. Motion by Alder Fischler, and is there a second? Second by Alder Morrow. All right, hearing no other conversation about this topic, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Abstentions, motion carries. Excellent. The next item is the TIF creation memo and maps, or TIF creation, thinking about moving forward. We talked about this last time. We're kind of hitting a critical mass. Is that the best way to kind of?
A critical time period.
A critical time period.
Yes.
And even since last month, when we talked about, bringing back all this information, which I see Director Kronowski has put together, our economy has changed ever so slightly,
It has.
or dramatically.
Yes.
And that certainly causes pause, but it also says we should probably be proactive now, or at least I think.
Yeah.
Because we could miss a window of opportunity and see a downslide that could not be great. So, go ahead, Director.
Okay, so as alluded to earlier, this is just a follow-up from the last meeting. Just for general background for the folks who are eagerly watching at home, city is obviously meeting or will be exceeding our 12% equalized value rule, which is imposed on us by the state of Wisconsin. We currently have 6 active TIF districts. We are looking at essentially having to max out at 21 million, essentially, per new TIF that would be created. There were 3 TIFs that staff has proposed. TIF A, I'll call the Convent/Division Street North TIF. I should preface all this, in the packet, it did state that the convent is under a letter of intent to sell. I misspoke. I have a few angry sisters with me. The convent is under a letter of intent, not to sell, but to work with General Capital to look at development alternatives for the site. So in the news or in the media, the convent is not for sale, but they are working with one developer to look at opportunities. So I just wanted to clarify that, and hopefully the sisters are watching this and can breathe a sigh of relief as well. So, but you know, what I'll call the lowest hanging fruit is the Division Street Convent TIF. And if you look in your packet itself, it's everything that's in red or purple. We did pick up the convent property, the extension of Schofield Avenue. We took it south along the Vincent Street right-of-way and the, East Lutheran campus there to 6th Avenue. And then we picked up a number of properties that were already within TIF number 5, but what staff would consider to be underdeveloped. And as TIF 5 nears the end of its expenditure period, and as we look to implement the targeted area master plan for Division Street, it's pretty prudent that we start to essentially layer some of the TIF, especially along the Division Street corridor, just to start doing some of those improvements as well. And then we took that further south to Franklin Street, just north of the YMCA, for a possible redevelopment of those areas. Again, and we used the targeted area master plan for the Division Street, but the lowest hanging fruit, if you will, is the repurposing and redevelopment of the convent property. And the 53 acres identified as parcel 72, that's also currently owned by the sisters. That would be probably where we're going to get a lot of the new increment. My general idea is probably some type of higher density 1, 2, 3 family residential there. But that's to be determined. We're still going through a lot of the placemaking with the sisters and with General Capital as well. So I guess, President Johnson, did you want to take this per project or per TIF?
Yeah, let's do it per project.
Okay.
Thank you. That would be good. So let's start with the TIF A as the packet is indicating, and as the director has outlined. What questions do you have, concerns, ideas, starting with the committee? None?
I mean, I think the director has a good point. I mean, this is the lowest hanging fruit.
I
I
agree.
mean, with that, that's the biggest part of land within this city that really doesn't have any kind of development on it. That's not Park or Green Circle really. And that convent, I don't think there's that many residents in the convent. I mean, I know we had some that moved over to the assisted living where I live, and they're like 5, and there weren't that many left then.
Yeah.
There's currently 17 remaining.
Oh, okay. But I think that would be one of the best places for us to really try to look at that. Because you're right, they could do a lot with that land. They could do a lot with housing. They could repurpose the convent. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there.
How many acres is that parcel?
The 72 is 53 acres.
Oh, I see.
70 is, I think, 35
Oh,
or so.
wow.
So.
And it's
obviously
surrounded by infrastructure.
Correct, yeah, and we already have the right-of-way for Schofield Avenue to do a possible extension to the west. My suspicion would be an extension of Meadow Street, and then
yeah.
there is long-term planning right now to extend Third as well further north. That would require additional right-of-way acquisition between 6th Ave and Maria, and connecting up that to Schofield. On the north side, there are some lowlands, so there will be some nice amenities there for the neighborhood and parkland, things of that nature. But again, we're going through a lot of the placemaking, and we're very intentionally involving the sisters and some of the other residents of the convents to make sure that they're comfortable with the route that General Capital and the city is going with the repurposing and redevelopment of some of the convent property.
Go ahead.
And I guess this is not specific to the convent, this is more specific to the whole agenda item as far
Right.
as creating TIFs. I mean, there's a process for creating, we have to, the school district, the county has to sign off on it. I mean, what is that process and as far as
Sure.
cost? And then another thing, you had stated that, it sounded like you were maybe realigning or rearranging the boundaries of TIF 5 to include some of these, some of the areas to the east, on the east side of TIF 5, and bringing it into this new created TIF. And I guess what process is that to rearrange that?
Sure. So, well, let me back up. So, essentially, what we're doing tonight is you're giving Corey and I the green light to go ahead and start working with Ellers, which is our financial consultant, to start putting together some TIF plans. And those plans will specifically call out some of the expenditures, what we expect for new development, some of the increment, and lay out the steps for how we would implement the TIF district, whether, you say, let's do all three, let's do just two of them, or even one. Then the next step would be to bring it back to finance. This process typically takes between 60 and 90 days. There's some legalities in this as well, including some public hearings. But once this body feels comfortable, the Plan Commission also has to review it and approve it. Then we take it to the joint board of review, and that's the school district, the city, the county, and the technical college, and that's really the ultimate authority. They hold a final public hearing and they give it thumbs up or thumbs down. In the event that they would give it a thumbs down, then the TIF would go back to the drawing board. We kind of start over and say, okay, now what's palatable for these taxing jurisdictions? Maybe it's a smaller boundary. Maybe we take some property out of it. That kind of a thing. But my experience, I've created about 3 TIFs, and I've never had a joint review board that's rejected a proposal as long as it's laid out well and the plan is followed. As it relates to your question on TIF 5, the physical boundary of TIF 5 is not changing. A few years ago, the state started to allow communities to layer TIFs, and so the base value is for the properties that are already in TIF 5 will remain at the base value of TIF 5. You just keep them in the TIF longer. And so, and any new increment within the layered TIFs, layered properties of the TIF district go to the new TIF, not to TIF 5.
And I just one comment that, I think TIF districts are a great tool, to create incentive for redevelopment and, taking care of blighted areas. So, as long as we can get the other jurisdictions to agree and, we can come up with an agreement,
Yeah.
I think it's a good deal.
I have another comment,
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I mean, for the convent area, I'm surprised. I mean, it seems like they would not even really need a TIF, because that's prime land. Because within the city, there's not that much developable land that's even available.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the thoughts that was coming through my head, was that, with the lack of housing, that they'd have developers just chomping at the bit to get in there and use that land to end up putting up some kind of new housing, really.
Urban subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the big thing with the convent property is, first off, in order for us to work towards repurposing the 1901 and 1915 property, which is the historical, culturally significant convent property, there needs to be some serious investment made by General Capital or whomever the sisters would choose to partner with. But there's also a very high likelihood that they would come to the city for some type of assistance. The one thing that we've just preliminarily discussed internally is the cost of asbestos abatement. This property is looking at about $800,000 worth of asbestos abatement, which is substantial. And to make a project work, you can't do anything with a historic property in terms of renovation, remodeling, without asbestos abatement. And so, just to kind of put it a little bit into context, if this is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, one of the best ways to save historic properties, is through economic development, and this is one of those tools that we will likely be on the hook for assisting a developer in redeveloping that specific property. as it relates to the rest of it, like the 53 acres, you could exclude that. Part of the reason it was included was because there's a very high likelihood that we would not incentivize some of the urban neighborhood development, but that increment that's generated there would help offset some of the costs on Division Street. It's currently not taxed, and so including it didn't do any harm to that $21 million ceiling that we were working against. So that's why it was included as part of it. It could definitely be excluded if that's the wish of the committee, but my recommendation would be to keep it as part of the TIF.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, so my understanding is that TIF districts just give us some flexibility in terms of how to develop things. So even if that TIF district is determined, there's a possibility that nothing is done with it, which is okay. But it does give us that flexibility in the event, we want to build up other areas, right?
Correct.
And I think, excuse me, one of the things I hear frequently from my colleagues on county board, especially in the rural areas, is the city's TIFs are doing no favor to the rural areas. Well, there's a very large area is not paying any taxes already. So it would have, well, it's truth. So putting it into a TIF, that argument is gone, and actually it could potentially mean it moves back on the tax roll sometime in the future, so.
Yeah, I mean, once that goes back on, the TIF closes,
Right.
it's a huge boost to everyone.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to take a longer view.
All right. Are there other questions on this option A? Anyone in the audience?
Logan
Oh,
has something.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Just one really quick comment with regards to what Alderperson Morrow said about, this is prime development land. There could be an argument that it doesn't need to be a TIF, there doesn't need to be a mechanism for incentives. But another way to think of TIF districts is, yes, it can be a thing that allows you to use tools to try to prompt development to happen in a place where it might not otherwise happen, or to prompt it to happen sooner than it otherwise would happen. But you have to remember that if somebody comes in with a plan for something that's a permitted use in that area, well, as long as they check the boxes and it meets the building code, they can build it. And if something's a conditional use, obviously we all have plenty of experience going through that and knowing that our ability to put conditions on things is relatively tailored. Whereas if somebody wants an incentive, you can put any condition on it you want that they're willing to agree to in a negotiated setting. So I think that's one of the biggest values in TIF districts is you can get the development you want. And it's really the only tool we have in the box for doing that, unless we happen to be the ones that own the land, in which case then you can, do all kinds of things. But
Right.
that's not the case here. So.
Yeah, good point, thank you. Yes, Alder Shore.
Thank you, Chair. To make a related point, and even if, even separate from options to offer incentives, any infrastructure responsibilities that we have, that's the other advantage, is not just being able to incentivize development, but to keep the revenue that we might need.
Right. Did you want approvals going forward from each one, or shall we just go with?
I don't think we need any formal action.
Okay.
I think what I'm gathering here is that we're okay with I'll call TIF A, the Convent North
TIF A,
Division
yeah.
Street, and we'll move forward with that, working with Ellers to start putting together some project plans.
I get the sense that would be the case, yes?
Correct.
All right. That seems to be the consensus. Then we've got the Church Street TIF.
Correct. So the city's first, official industrial park was along Michigan Ave and Rice Streets. Chamber Street is in the middle of that business park, adjacent to the railway spur. The buildings in that area are aged, and so this is kind of an opportunity now as we approach and being a little bit proactive. If any of these companies would look to relocate, what are we left with? First and foremost, environmental contamination and concern there, so the remediation. If you look at the map itself, it includes all of the original, excuse me, industrial park. I utilized some of the railroad's right-of-way to create, I'll call a finger down to Neville Street, adjacent to Church, water, going up to the Save-A-Lot property, picking up the mobile home park there as well, and then the Blue Top Hotel, the gas station, and then just some of the adjacent commercial properties. Not as quite of low-hanging fruit with immediate development opportunities. However, we, being a bit proactive in the possible ability for us to repurpose some of the old industrial park area and then do some improvements on Church Street as well, or encourage new development on the south side of the city. This is definitely something that I think we should consider. If we wouldn't do this, the area's kind of up to fend for itself, and let's say one of the industrial users there decides to get up and leave and move elsewhere to another part of the city or anything like that, we might not have those financial tools to redevelop the properties. So it's got a weird shape to it, I'll admit, but I think that this is a nice proactive development opportunity and TIF opportunity here as we approach our 12% limit.
Yeah, we developed oddly around that original industrial park, and there's no place to really grow, so it does mean reimagining what that space is. I think there's opportunity there, and we'd be foolish not to look at this, I think.
So we do have a lot of wiggle room here. I'll call the base TIF that staff put together has us at about 13.5 million. So we do have a lot of room that we can play with to pick up additional land here to just fully expand the TIF and utilize it to its fullest extent.
Questions for the director? Go ahead, Alder Shore.
Thank you. Walgreens isn't excluded specifically because of the whole Walgreens issue, I assume. It's a joke.
Yes.
Not my best work.
No. Dark store. It's dark because it's dark. Yes.
So some of the land was excluded.
Oh,
The Walgreens property, the inclusive property, mainly because they're pretty high in assessed value and staff doesn't foresee them becoming low-hanging redevelopment sites anywhere in the near future. We could always pick those up as well, but then you're adding additional assessed value to the TIF and doesn't really need it.
No, I was just taking a gratuitous shot.
Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, yeah, full circle, I got it now. Yeah.
yeah. Other questions? Questions from the audience? I'm getting a sense that we need to, we would be foolish not to give this one last look.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And then finally,
So the proposed Highway 10 TIF district, we had discussed this a little bit at the last meeting. Do we really want to be focusing development incentives or TIF districts out on the fringe of the town? And so I thought, just as a whole, this is the last stop. This site is blighted. It has been blighted for several decades now.
Yeah.
Will this assist in getting some type of development and reducing the blight in this area? So that's why it was included as part of the packet. When we talked about this last month, I thought, well, maybe this isn't really what we want. But I think we have to look at it just from being that proactive side, that if we do nothing, okay, for the next 10, 12, 15 years, we won't be able to do anything to encourage redevelopment of that property. So there has been some developers who have looked at it. I don't think it's an immediate redevelopment site. It is for sale for way more than it probably should be, if I'm honest. But people are trying to get out of this property and they're trying to get their top dollar, and I understand. But there might be some opportunity for residential development on the south side, creating some type of additional commercial, even office or retail space closer to Highway 10. There's also been discussions about whether or not a hotel could be a viable option out here as well. So that was included as part of it. There are other public infrastructure improvements closer to the I-39 interchange that, maybe do we extend this further down Highway 10 to maybe pick up some of those pedestrian bicycle infrastructure improvements that I think are worth considering as we look to increase the non-motorized connectivity of the community. So,
Thoughts? Yeah, Alder Murrow.
I think this would be a good idea too, because, we were just lucky when the Kmart store,
Yeah.
when that development came in, because that could have been the same way as the old Walmart store. So, and we were just lucky to be able to get that. It was close to the college, and everything else there has moved out. So there's nothing but there's only nothing there but Dunham's.
Any other?
I just
I'm sorry.
wanted to add to that. I agree, because I think that definitely it just gives you more flexibility to work with,
Yeah.
different ideas.
And I think the discussion of the sprawl component, we've already got some existing, there is existing infrastructure out there. So, I think it's on the list too. I would like to see something there rather than massive concrete and asphalt. But go ahead, Alder Jennings.
Tori Jennings, Alder District 1. It probably wouldn't be a surprise to anyone that I don't like this one. Given how tight our budgets are when we do these incentives, it might end up being an either-or choice. And if we incentivize Highway 10, we are taking money away from the core of the city where TIF really works well. We use TIF, or we should be using TIF in places that are high risk to develop, difficult to develop, and that's always the downtown core area for lots of reasons. That's a real tough area for developers, particularly when they go into the banks and ask for funding. This is not a difficult area. The market can take care of this. There are, why incentivize places that are not difficult to develop? So I'm sorry, but I disagree with this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Nabel.
For some reason, I keep losing my voice when I try to talk. Cindy Nabel, District 3. I do understand this, but I do agree with Alder Jennings on this, and I'm still wishing and wondering when we're going to be looking at putting some TIFs in some neighborhoods, which we haven't done yet, and that was talked about back in the day with Halverson. And we have a whole block that the university has almost bought all of it up, and they cannot afford to really do, and we don't want more parking lot there. And I still think that there's options to revitalize areas around the university and houses that are around there by, I've been told that there could be a possibility there'd be an interest in those properties, the university not being able to afford to do anything right now. What if the city did get those back and then develop them into townhouses or things like that, and you bring in a whole nother group of people that are some families again back into that area that has lost so much. And we have so many of the landlords are saying now in my area, telling me, well, you better look out because you're going to have the worst renters now because you have all these apartments. And so, I have worried about that for years because I know what happens there. If they're not going to be able to get the rent that they were getting, they're not going to they don't put anything into it now, so they're going to put even less into it. But if you start getting some decent places in there on a block, it can change that whole area. And so I just like to bring that back forward as,
It's kind of outside of,
is that outside of doing
a
a
little
TIF?
bit, but it is a good point.
Can that be, because when we talked about TIFs were for blight.
That's Yeah, I guess we could probably bring it in
And I
using
just
that.
think that's part of it, and we're talking about we need housing, and those places could be taken out and put a whole new style of
Sure.
townhouse-type living, and bringing in people that want to live near the university. It has a lot of great amenities, and near, the downtown still, and be in some great area that they can get to, walk to everything. I just still think we should be looking at that, because that will really make a difference in neighborhoods when you get a block of something changing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with putting new in.
This is the old cops.
Yes, Director, and then I'll go with Alder Nebo.
Sorry, Alder, I might be taking your thunder here for a second. So I did look at the opportunity to do a TIF district, a blight elimination, and I guess I'll call the core area around the University College Briggs Avenue. And really what I thought of was, we created TIF 10, which goes almost immediately adjacent to the blocks in the area that Alder Nebel has talked about. And so I think it's important, and through the mechanics of TIF districts, that, we can use the TIF and expend some money outside the physical boundary of the TIF district. We have a half-mile radius, and obviously the blocks that Alder Nebel just talked about are included within that half-mile radius. And so there's a reason that it was included, that maybe we can utilize some increment that's generated in TIF 10 to go outside the boundaries of the TIF, to use some money for maybe some land acquisition, not necessarily for developer incentives, but the acquisition piece, which through not convolution, but could also be used for developer incentive, turn around and sell the property for a reduced cost. So that's why that wasn't included as part of it. After, we set our TIF districts, we can amend the project plans. We just can't add any more land within that. So, an opportunity would be, instead of to create a new TIF for the core, would be to amend the physical boundary of TIF 10, if this body so chooses, that we add some of the land within there as well. So,
Okay.
just as an FYI, that it was thought about pretty extensively, and is not forgotten about. I know that Alder and I have talked a number of times on this, so.
Okay, thank you. Alder Nebo.
Yes, Mary Nebone, District 7, Alder. I moved out in that neighborhood in 2006 and was thrilled that we had a grocery store there. And it was about 3 years later, that the Cops closed. And it's been empty ever since. And I'm not sure when the Walmart, that came in after I left and is gone before I got back. That area cries out for some development incentive, whether it's a TIF or not, I don't know. But, I mean, that's Highway 10, that's one of the main gateways to our city. On any Friday, on a holiday weekend, or any summer Friday, the cars are backed up all the way out to the end of Badger Drive there.
Say Highway J or
And all
County
they
J.
see is that awful, empty concrete expanse out there. So I appreciate the fact that it's being looked at for the potential. We're willing to wait our turn, and if it's not in the cards to make it a TIF soon, I'd like it to be considered sometime, because it's already a blighted area. And it's got amenities, it's got infrastructure that it's not like we're creating something where there is nothing. We improve on something that's pretty bad, so, thanks.
You're welcome, thank you. Alder Dugan. Everybody's going to have their say about this one.
We've talked about this area before in Alder Nebone's district, and I've taken a good close look at it, walked all around it. It would be an ideal place for some residents, like residential areas like townhouses, back on the south edge, where there's a lot of greenery. There's a nice area out there, and you could also develop the front part of it as a kind of little village area with retail and gathering places. It actually could be made into a lovely situation, and then maybe Alder Nebone would actually live there. You could move over there. Anyway, I know it would have real possibilities, whether we do it as a TIF or not. Just something to think about.
Thanks. So did you have anything more to add on that one, Director? Okay, thanks. Back to the committee, how do we feel about this? What's our,
So this is just discussion, right?
what's
Or
that?
This is just discussion, or are you
Just
looking for?
discussion,
yeah,
we're
sorry.
kind of directing staff
Yeah.
then to start working with Ellers. Yeah? Okay. Yes? All right.
Nodding heads.
Yes, nodding heads, we're all bobbleheads. Yeah. You have your directions, thank you very much. All right, good discussion, though, and a lot of good information. I know it takes a while, but I find it very helpful. All right, yes.
Oh, we did this.
What's that?
Asking for the claim speaker.
Yes.
Oh, she would have it. All right, the next item on our agenda is the approval of claims paid. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Are there any discussions about the claims that have been paid? Hearing none. Anyone have any questions? Hot topic here. All righty. All those in favor of approving the claims paid, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Abstentions? Motion carries. And that will be circulated so we can sign that. All right, now, number 7, adjourn into closed session approximately 7:20, not pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session on the following. A, negotiating the terms of a sale of city-owned property in TIF 10. Negotiating an amendment to the development agreement for 1017 3rd Street, Northside Yard, former Lullaby site. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we go into closed session for discussion of those items for those
All
purposes.
right, we have a motion
I second.
and a second. All those, roll call. I'm sorry. Carrie?
Slawinski,
Aye.
Morrow,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Shore,
Aye.
Bichler.
Aye.
We are in closed session at 8:43.
Videos of these meetings are available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.